The campus fallout to Donald Trump's victory. Dismay, disbelief, and a call for college sanctuaries.
We're here to demand that NYU make this campus a sanctuary to protect our students who are undocumented, to protect all the students that we have here.
No one actually believed Trump would win, and last night's election really devastated everyone.
I feel angry, I feel scared, I feel confused.
And it's important for everyone, not just undocumented immigrants, to feel safe on this campus.
For many in the college sphere, Trump's presidency is being treated as shocking and traumatic. Students at the University of Michigan were offered post-election self-care events with Play-Doh, colouring books and Lego. At the University of Pennsylvania, there were so-called safe spaces with puppies. Students at Cornell held a cry-in. At Yale, they shared a group scream. Stanford offered psychological counselling. And some universities even cancelled classes or exams to give people time to grieve. On many US campuses, there is an assumption that the wrong candidate won. But is this the kind of political coddling that gave rise to Trump's victory in the first place? America has battled with moral ideology for much of its history. The modern culture wars in the 1960s were fought over ideas like black civil rights, gay rights, feminism and abortions. But it was thought that fight was over, that the left had, and always would, win the culture wars. But Donald Trump's victory shows that these wars are far from over. Universities across the US are increasingly offering safe spaces where students can escape prejudice, and no platforming, banning speakers who have upsetting opinions. Those in favour say they're necessary to protect students and ensure hateful ideas aren't given a podium. But others believe they're an attack on free speech, and that from the campus to social media, the bright minds of the future are living in echo chambers, with distorted worldviews, damaging to democracy. So should colleges be a place of sanctuary where students can avoid feeling oppressed or threatened? Or is this stifling of opposition and argument more dangerous? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Chicago is Jonathan Helwink. He's a history professor at Wilbur Wright College. And from San Francisco, Juan Prieto. He's a student at the University of California and a protest organizer for Fight for Spaces of Color. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Juan, at Berkeley, you're calling for safe spaces for people of color. Why does Berkeley or any other college in the US need safe spaces for people of color when you have a democracy and students are treated equally under the law?
Right. I think first we need to clarify that the spaces of color we were fighting for aren't necessarily this ideological space that the media keeps sort of spinning. Quite literally, it's a physical safe space. So the campaign is organized by Bridges, which is a multicultural resource center that tries to recruit and retain students of color onto this university. Since Proposition 209 banned affirmative action in the University of California, we saw a decrease of students of color onto this campus. And so Bridges came about an attempt to recruit and retain these students.
Jonathan, Juan says that their legitimate fears are being treated with contempt. They're not being taken seriously. Minorities, the undocumented, feeling harassed and squeezed and so on. You've written, Jonathan, that safe spaces just make the world more dangerous. Why do you say that, Jonathan?
Well, thanks for having me, first off. What I would say is a lot of what Juan said I actually agree with. I think it makes some sense to provide certain protections to individuals who come from backgrounds that are not historically represented in American higher ed. I think a lot of that kind of makes sense. What I wrote about in my article was that I think there's really kind of two different safe spaces that we're talking about here. The first is the one that Juan is talking about, where individuals can go to an actual physical place on campus to feel safe. And I think what he means, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what he means is to be with people who are like-minded, who share their experiences, who understand the kind of things that they are encountering both on campus and in their world as well. I think there's a lot of validity to that kind of safe space argument. The one that I think actually does make the world more dangerous is when that safe space is in the classroom. And that's what my article is really about. I think what is often forgotten in this debate around safe space is that there really is a sanctuary already on campus, a safe space already in place for any ideas to be expressed, obviously with certain restrictions and with guidance and moderation from the professor, and that is the classroom.
Right. Okay, so Jonathan makes some interesting points there, Juan. Are you convinced by any of that? Because he's saying, yes, he's fine with a physical safe space where you want to be among people who think like you or who are like you and you feel comfortable around, but that you shouldn't be drowning out or shouting out alternate ideas or ideas that you don't like. Are you for that, Juan?
Yeah, and I don't think that's anything we currently advocate for. I mean, the classroom is, as he's mentioned, a place where the professor serves as a moderator, and you have different ideas battling it out. It just so happens that some ideas get heard louder. There's a specific sort of history that gets told where they look at people that come from our backgrounds as the other. It doesn't sort of tell Latin American history as something that might belong to a student in the classroom. It's told as the other. And so though there is a sort of, the professor does serve as the moderator, there is a certain advantage to someone who comes from a specific background as opposed to another. Right. And I mean, that just so happens to be the classroom. It's a battle of wits. It's with a moderator as a professor. And it just so happens that we need that physical space to then go to discuss this, discuss these experiences of, hey, they were talking about the community I come from as if it's something else, not something that I personally came from. And so, right, the classroom does serve as this place where you can discuss how these ideas that conflict each other. In fact, after we did a protest on Sather Gate in which the media spun it as if we were not allowing white students in, which was completely untrue. It was fabricated by a reporter in London whose name is Lucas Michaelionis, and who was not on the scene at all. It's then been, administration has sort of cleared that up. Administration who was present, and even the police said that's not what was happening. They were blocking all students. But it's just really scary how quickly you can turn our voices into something that's very hostile,
right.
and then turn it against us.
And it's good that you clarified that.
And so that's what we're dealing with in the classroom as well.
Jonathan, I want to broaden this out to the elections, because 2016 seems to be the year of identity politics or culture wars in the United States, and punctuated by the Trump presidential election. There's an argument that that liberals or the left made the mistake of being fixated on identity politics to the extent that they didn't realize that some white people could then pick up the ball and say, hey, we're also going to try identity politics, and with that we're going to vote for Donald Trump, and we're going to vote based on our white identity as well. Do you concur with that?
Well, I think, I mean, we're only, well, it's going to be 2 weeks tomorrow out of the election. So I think we're still just beginning the process of understanding why people voted, why they voted. But I've heard what you've said a lot, and I've seen it in my classroom as well. And I'm glad to hear what Juan said. I think he has a very good approach to this. What I would say, though, is that there is a movement within the classroom, though, to curtail free speech, and that comes to the point where we're talking about things in class that might be dangerous or might be controversial, or which some students might find hurtful. There is an argument among primarily people on the left that do want to impact speech in the classroom. For instance, teaching works of literature that may have controversial scenes in them or controversially named characters. And in my opinion, in my approach to this topic, I think all of that stuff is off limits. I really don't think it makes much sense at all to avoid controversial topics in the classroom. Now, there is a right way, I think, and a wrong way, I think, to approach these topics, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong at all, I think, with empathy in the classroom. I see it a lot in my students now since the election. I have many undocumented students in my classroom, in all of my classes, and yes, they are concerned about what the next few months will bring, or what the next 4 years will bring. And I think, getting back to your question, that's kind of both the challenge and I think part of the reason why people voted for someone like Donald Trump. You know, I ask my students, and I think myself, you know, what was Donald Trump's position on immigration? What was his position on trade? What was his position on any number of issues? And the truth is that when you listen to the things that he says often contradictory things.
Okay, gentlemen, unfortunately, I've got to wrap. It's been a pleasure, both from Chicago and the Bay Area. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us, Jonathan and Juan.